Hey guys, Phil here. Happy Friday. Kind of a cool episode today. This is one with Sukaina from Mississauga Foodbanks, and then also Todd Fisher, who runs Kimberly Clark Canada. And we got these two together because they're doing kind of a cool partnership together. And, if you've heard any of our episodes before, obviously. We talk a lot about, or we have talked about food banks and kind of the need for them. We've had Megan from Mississauga Food Banks on our Fast Thoughts before as well. And because Kimberly Clark and Mississauga Food Banks is doing something cool, we got the two of them together just to talk about, kind of what they're doing, and then also if other companies want to be able to do this, how you might be able to go about building a partnership. So we thought that was kind of cool. And then, it's in the middle of summer. We're all enjoying, if you can, we're enjoying the summer. And I think it's a good time to just give it some thought, right? We've got fall and Thanksgiving coming before you know it. And there's still lots of families that could really use some help out there. So kind of a feel-good Friday story. We hope you enjoy this, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks.
Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Benucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
Anytime you juggle, kind of four of us.
Yeah, it's always interesting.
Yeah, but kind of interesting. So we're excited to do this with you guys.
Thank you for doing this. I am too. It's my first time, so it's kind of like, okay, don't know what to expect, or but
we're pretty low key. Like, so we
chat.
Yeah, like think of this like a coffee chat. We really kind of, Kenny and I, when we started this podcast, was really. We like talking to each other. We thought we were going to just hang out and talk. And then all of a sudden we got a following. And this thing has more from, really like us talking about retail trends. We still do that. But we do a lot of we like to zero in on Canadian businesses and things that are happening in the industry. And then the underlying belief is Canadians do some pretty amazing things. But as Canadians we don't really talk about it a whole lot. We kind of just do and then go away. And then we let all of our other global Southern counterparts do a lot more talking than we do. So I think
we're terrible promoters of ourselves.
Yeah.
Terrible.
So this podcast has turned into that. And then along the way, I think where the intersections are really cool is, with food banks, we I live in Mississauga. I'm an ex-KCer. And so, I get the emails, from Food Bank, and we realize what was happening there and kind of how things have changed. And so, what you guys are doing, what Food Banks is doing, and then what Kimberly Clark is doing side by side, I think is really cool. And then we try and do what we can. So we've got every now and then people tune in and listen to us. So we try and feature, folks that are doing good in the industry. And we had, we've had some folks on from Vancouver. We had Food Banks on earlier as well, just talking about kind of the needs they needed. So that's where this kind of all came together in this intersection. So, so pretty cool. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for making the time to come on. So,
of course, thank you. I mean, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing, but more importantly, what the need is in the community and how the community can come together to support. Yeah. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do this as well.
Yeah. So we're I think
as I said, we're pretty casual. So I thought maybe what we do is, if the two of you want to introduce each other, yourselves, sorry, and then we'll we'll get into this. Or you can do that if you guys know each other well.
Makes you happy.
But maybe you can introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into kind of why we're here and what's going on.
It's actually, I think, the first time that Todd and I are actually having a conversation as well.
Okay. Oh, so it'd be really interesting to introduce each other.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
See what I can find online.
Yeah, 100%. So,
all right.
Who wants to start?
I'm happy to go first if you like.
Go for it.
Okay, so I've been in the social profit sector for the last 15 plus years, and I've worked with charities, foundations, mainly in fund development, as well as I've worked on the corporate side for one of Canada's largest home improvement companies on the development and execution of an employee engagement program, as well as their foundation fundraising programs. It was the company's foundation, and it was a national program. So I've been in this space for a fair good amount of time, with the experience from both being on the receiving fund development side, as well as spending some of that money through grants and so on. I've been with Foodbanks Mississauga for just over 2 years, and I love the work that I do, and I'm so very motivated by just working with organizations that are actually driving impact in our local communities. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome.
Oh, very good. Cool. Yeah, I'll go next. I mean, so I've been with Kimberly Clark. I think it's 13 years now. I've been in consumer packaged goods for 20 years. Kind of the tilt. I was an economist by training, and then got out of school, did that for a little bit, and then jumped into CPG, and I've never looked back in regards to that. I'd say, in relation to Foodbanks Mississauga, so I've been in this role for 4 years. It's being the general manager of Consumer Canada, and in that time, COVID happened. And one of the things that was a little bit of an output of that was, as an organization, really looking to see where we could help and where we could support. And I mean, one thing led to another, and I ended up getting contact with the Foodbanks Mississauga through a product donation that we had done, and conversation started. And since then, I've joined the board. So I've been on the board with that organization for 3 years now, and I've been the board chair for, I think, the last one and a bit. Trying to check the calendar, but and since that time, just really trying to integrate and how the sector and CPG can partner with organizations like Foodbanks Mississauga.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, and we did. We were surprised. I think when we had Foodbanks on, I think almost 6 months ago, we just talked about, it's kind of shocking, the numbers.
The statistics are really ugly. Yeah. Is what it's. We were dumbfounded as how many Canadians are. I mean, we knew people unfortunately required the service of a food bank, right? And a lot of times it could be just a short term, it's a break. We were just surprised how many in the last couple of years. Like, the growth is, typically in business, we're all looking for growth, not this one.
Yeah.
It's that. It would just felt really wow. Yeah. Wow.
I typically, when I talk to organizations and individuals and I share the numbers, sometimes I'll get the response of, "Oh, wow, that's great." And then I go, no. In your business, growth of these numbers is incredible, probably unheard of, 20-30% increase year over year. But in our business, it's not at all great. And
no, you'll take declines all day.
And you'll never hear anybody other than people in our sector who will say, we're the one sector who would say, we're kind of okay if we were to be all out of a job, if nobody needed our work and our service, right? It's unfortunate that, we're not heading in that direction.
So do you two mind, for listeners, the reason we're here, right? So we 6 months ago, we had this conversation, and then what came up a couple of months ago was a partnership that Kimberly Clark and Foodbanks Mississauga have done together. And it's funny because when we were on the call with Megan Nichols, the CEO of Foodbanks, we talked about like how many CPG brands there are out there that could contribute in a meaningful way. And then, you guys, like Todd, you and your crew, they popped up almost right away, right, as this partnership that's happening. So we just love it if the two of you could kind of tell us about the partnership a little bit, what you guys are doing, because I think what you're doing is amazing in the light of kind of what's going on. And
tell us how it started too, like
Yeah.
and it's not because I'm more curious for myself, like, because maybe this will help other people, like who came to whom, and like what was like why the two of you? I mean,
Yeah.
Kimberly Clark you could do so many
you
other
could do this
charities
anywhere.
or causes, whatever you want to do, wherever you want. You're large enough, and even for Mississauga, like why Kimberly Clark? Why not ABCD, whatever the hell that is?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, even on that side of it, like
I mean,
why?
and I can kind of tell you the story. I mean, things like anything in life, things kind of happen the way they do, right? But the reason where it went was in COVID. Kimberly Clark has a great foundation internationally. We do a lot of work around the world. We got, in Canada, we've had United Way programs. We've had employee-based things, and our brands contribute in a variety of ways. But in COVID, I think it really brought to light, a good part of humanity where we actually, everybody cared more about each other. And we as an organization made a donation of product, right? It was one of the things we looked around and said, what can we do? And we said, oh, local Foodbanks Mississauga, they're in need. Let's send over some diapers and Kotex product. What ended up happening after that was it kind of kicked off two streams, and which really brought us together. One being Foodbanks Mississauga reached out and said, would you be interested in having a discussion about being on the board? And that was like a personal journey which I've taken which I can turn to. But on the company side of things, it actually just really led to in my role as a general manager, looking across the business and saying, what else could we do locally in the community? I think you kind of said it, Kenny, is like big company, lots of impact. But one of the things is we're based out of Mississauga. Our history's in Mississauga. Many of our employees work in Mississauga, and the need and the things that you've seen about, and I'm sure Sukaina can share more of the stats, but we started to see that. And in an industry that was being plagued by inflation and the rising cost of living, which was one of the harder or longer term outputs of the COVID, was where can we support? And it really just started in that relationship. It started with a couple product donations, right? I, as a leader of the company, started getting involved with the board, getting to know Megan, getting to know the team there, and really the great work they were doing. It then kicked out into, why don't we go as a team? I took my leadership team and we went to a community market that they do, and they, set up these pop-up markets around Mississauga and underserved communities, and giving out vegetables and fresh foods and whatnot. And we all enjoyed that. We're like, this is, number one, we're giving product. We feel good as people getting out there. It gets us from behind our desks and Zoom calls, right? And we were trying to do that. And I would just say it evolved really from there to start in sort of small steps where we got back, talked about it, and other teams in the office were like, I'd like to go do that. I'd like to go do something with Foodbanks Mississauga. And the relationship from a business perspective evolved in a way where we just sort of became partner organizations, and our employees were engaged with Foodbanks Mississauga. And then through that time, I was on the board learning what boards do. Like you called it, Kenny, like it's kind of weird. You get a lot of people on the board are from a professional background. We're looking at the numbers and doing kind of what you said and saying, hey, that's fantastic growth. But, and really going a personal learning for me about, what was happening and the great work that the team was doing. And then we decided to I think there's a huge need came around when they were busting from the seams, right? You can imagine Foodbanks started from grassroots. They were supposed to be there temporarily to solve a need, and now they're part of our social fabric. Yeah. But in this time, you can imagine when you see the numbers of users, they were going through a real big challenge on how the facility couldn't handle the demand. Mm-hmm. So as much as you could get the product in, you couldn't put the product anywhere. There was offsite storage. You'd move things around 3 times between there, and they had to make a big decision to lease a new facility at times when it was really hard to get industrial space. And then with that, it's a bigger outlay, right? You're looking at a higher lease cost, and Foodbanks Mississauga at that time had to make the leap with the board to do that, and they started a campaign, Hold Back Hunger campaign, and Sukaina can talk more about that. but it was like trying to go out and get donations from the community and corporations. And we decided, this is an organization that we're really partnered with, and we're going to make a commitment, like a longer term commitment to help with the challenges in the community. And really, I'd say it's almost like grassroots, where the way it kind of came up through KC Canada, and people are just connected and feel good about it. And we feel like, hey, we do a lot of things around the world. We've got to, better care for a better world is our purpose. We try to touch a lot of people. We're like, why don't we touch them in Mississauga, where we work, with the current issues that are affecting many people around us.
It's fantastic.
No, the community aspect is cool because it's funny because I'm listening to you. You're a multinational, and yet you're talking Mississauga like it's the hometown, right? And which is really nice to hear from large companies because, as you know, most of the companies that we have in our country are not Canadian, really, outside of the employees they have. But, you can close a plant down, you can close a company down. You know what I mean? It becomes that cutthroat and that's fine. Business is business. We're a business podcast, so I get all that. But it is nice periodically to see a human element come out of the organization. I don't want the organization to be human, but I do like the fact that the people within it are thinking, hey, listen, you know what, man, our people work in this town. Our people are from here, people need help.
Yeah. It's been a little bit on that theme. It was interesting because as I got into the role, it was a big question of how do I actually do this? Like, how do you do this if there's the desire, the need? And there's a lot of fact finding, even calling around to peers, and not a lot of the answers were out there. But Kimberly, I touched base with our U.S. group, or 152 company, right, and said, want to do this? And I said, absolutely, right, and go for it, and kind of gave a playbook. How do you figure out where does the budget come from? All of those types of things, right? Because it's not always easy answers. Mm-hmm. And we started our first program. I actually just got back from that, a different one, but it was a mental health facility, Scarborough Health Network. The Love Scarborough campaign was the initial one that we partnered with, just because of the diversity of newcomers there and the needs. And then that spawned out into, like, now what we've got is a pillared program that's really focused across Canada. But I think Foodbanks Mississauga is really one of the core pillars because of the Mississauga component. But we try to do things around that matter to our employee base. I think you said it. We're all professionals, right? We're in a lot of countries. We got offices, 66
everywhere,
right? And sell products in 175. But we really try to feel like a Canadian company internally. We're everything that Canada is, super diverse around our employee base. We're from here. People make this their home, and how do we as a corporation contribute to the communities that we're able to do business in? Right. So it's profit from.
No, that's really good. And your size can make it. You guys can make a difference. Where a lot of the little companies who do support, it's tougher, right? Because it's a lot harder, right? Obviously, the percentages of what it really costs them versus what it potentially costs you guys are very different. So it's nice to see that the give back is there, which is good.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So how does this? So you guys are so the partnership. How does this work now? So you guys are partnered for the next year or so, and then what does that mean? Yeah, what does it mean?
I can speak a little bit about that. So even though the relationship precedes me at Foodbanks Mississauga, however, we have a multi-year partnership with Kimberly Clark, and what that means is that on an annual basis, we review a partnership, how the first year went, and then if there are any adjustments or anything that we want to change, but the commitment is to partner for 3 years. Kimberly Clark, we've been very fortunate that they've actually made an investment in the city of Mississauga to support the work that we're doing. So Todd touched on the what we're calling supporting the supporting people with food insecurity through our Hold Back Hunger program. And what the investment that Kimberly Clark has done with us has enabled us, number one, to, for example, I think Todd touched on it, increase our capacity when it comes to our warehouse. So we've moved into a facility that's now double the size, allowing us to actually support the food storage and so on for the increased need that we're seeing. In addition to that, it's allowed us to actually have a warehouse management system to upgrade and improve the system so that we can actually track the food that we've got in our warehouse, and that our agencies can actually order specifically what they need, and it's so much more efficient than our previous system, and a lot of that was manual. So while Kimberly Clark has made a financial commitment to us, it's really an investment in the community that they've done in this, and it's a multi-year, which is so important for organizations like us, that we need a partner that is actually consistent in their commitment to our work, so that we can actually rely on planning as well, and what we actually have, the resources that we have. And the other part of our partnership is also the employee engagement piece that Todd worked on, talked about. But from our end, we're very fortunate. We have volunteers that come from Kimberly Clark and are committed to actually helping us do the work. We rely very heavily on volunteer support in our warehouse through our other programs. So this partnership is very holistic. It's not just about, here's a donation and walk away and we're done. This is a investment from Kimberly Clark into the community. It's an investment in the organization, and it supports us in doing the work that we do. And it's multi-year, like I said. So yeah, it's the kind of partnership that we're looking for in the community. And Kimberly Clark has made a great partner for us.
I think it's lovely. I think the financial security is obviously huge, because it takes pressure off you from having to go knock on doors perpetually, which is really difficult at the best of times, right? So I think that financial security is great, but I do like the fact that it's also supported by the employees of. Do you know what I mean? Like it just feels a lot different. Listen, any large company, and just so you know, Todd, Phil and I pick at large companies all the time because we came from that world. We've dealt with them. It's not a living entity. It's paper, and they've got more than enough pen power to sign checks if they really want to. But that's really great. But it's a lot nicer when your employees and the people, like you're on the board, that takes time out of your world. You don't have to do it. You don't have to be on the board. You can just sign a check. But the fact you dedicate some time, the fact that the employees are trying to do this, the fact that it feels very community focused. It's a little different than what you normally hear, which is just, the grand check signing, the 4x6 check, and we all clap and everybody's happy and whatever.
One of the things that, like, when I talk to organizations, I'm always talking about this relationship within a company and a charity is like any other relationship. There's got to be a win-win for both, right?
Obviously.
There's got to be something that everybody's getting out of this. And one of the things that we see, and I'm sure Todd can speak to this as well, is that when a company is committed to giving back in the local community where their employees are living and working, it speaks to the company's values. And people today and COVID 100%. Has really drawn and amplified this, is that we're looking for value alignment as individuals. So to attract talent, to retain talent, that moral, that commitment is a win-win for the company, because, right, actually at the end of the day, it affects your bottom line, right?
Absolutely.
In a very positive way. And for us, we have individuals who sit on our board like Todd, who bring a different level of expertise to it for us as well. Yeah. So, we are, as you can imagine, we're very tight on our resources. So we really value the experience and the expertise that individuals like Todd also bring to us. So it's such a win-win. It's a no-brainer, honestly. There is no downside to this partnership as far as, I can speak to.
I would agree. I think even for companies to think of it, is you're helping people when they need the help the most. Yeah. I mean, people don't go to food banks because they're trying to kill time or they got nothing else to do during the day. right? It's typically, I mean, obviously, there's something going on. It's just not a good time in these families, people's lives. You know, people do remember those who help. And it's not, doesn't have to be a payback system or a quid pro quo, but it does play out that way. You know, when you do good just for the sake of doing good, people will reciprocate that good when they can. We don't want people being in food banks forever. We don't want people being in food banks, period. Like, seriously, if you guys were out of work tomorrow, that's a great day for the country.
Absolutely.
But you know what? We're not in that position, and I doubt we are going to be in anytime soon. So we do need people to step up, and we do need the help, and we got to make sure that Canadians, Christ, we're in Canada, man.
Yeah.
Like, food insecurity should be like the last thing on our list.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I think is, if I kind of think of like our audience, because we have a lot of CPG folks that listen to this, right? Not different, from us on this call. And I think like the common thing I hear from CPG folks is always like, oh, I have this very specific set of skills. How do I help? But like, I heard a whole bunch of things in there. Like, if you think of what Foodbanks Mississauga now has to go through is like a WMS, like who at Foodbanks, like a warehouse management system, who at Foodbanks thought you'd even need that, right? Like, everyone's
Why
like,
would you need it?
It's a bunch of boxes, we'll move it, what's the big deal? They're so big, guys, that they need a warehouse management system. They need a new ordering management system. Like, this stuff's crazy, right? Like, some people who listen to this call have probably spent all of their lives doing stuff like this, right? And you go, you have expertise now that these guys
that you can use, and people can,
like having Todd on this call, like all of a sudden the way you talk to other CPG companies maybe changes, right? Because the way you come at it, right? Like, and Todd is a really smart guy, and I've seen his sales skills. So if he's on that board, you're in trouble. Just give him the money or whatever they're asking for now. He's probably not going to take no for an answer, and he's going to get it from you, and you're probably going to feel good about it. So just give him what he wants.
Just do it.
But I make fun. I
say that. I try to remember Phil actually bought the product. I tried to sell him.
I wasn't even on the desk, and I bought the product, right? So.
Right. So.
Did you two end up? Did you two work together in the past? Then
no, we
or you well past.
So I was
you were well off
that, and then I met Todd when we were at when I was at Target and he was at Kimberly Clark. So
I tried to tell him something. I don't know if it was successful or not, but I didn't feel what you're saying there is like accurate. And as I joined the board, and I mean, like, honestly, I had never had board experience. It's just something felt like it's a good thing to do. You've got to get out there and figure out how you can help. And one of the questions in my mind going into that was, well, I run a consumer packaged goods company. How can I help on a board of a food bank? But that question quickly got answered when you get into there and you're just making decisions and you're saying, well, how do you make those decisions? How do you look at the financials? How do you evaluate the risk and the opportunity, and even moving the facility and an organization that doesn't have a constant revenue stream, and how do you take that leap? And so, anyways, all that being said, it was quickly like, I can help. It's enjoyable. You actually feel like you're putting your skills to use in a different way, as opposed to the, working for Kimberly Clark, which is a great thing to do, but you're helping in the community. But a big part of it has also been, and if consumer packaged goods in Canada is big and really small, right? So access to know most of the people in the roles similar to me or different roles in there. And it's been a bit of a journey since I've been on that as the board's rolled over, because it's changed a little bit as people's term come up. It's been, how do you bring in those skills that you're mentioning? How do you actually go out how do you actually get more food companies in, right? So there's, Adam Zitney from Smucker's joined, and it's like,
amazing.
Vice President of Marketing. And now as we have conversations, I've got other large manufacturers, people in my role who are like wanting to get on the board. It's like, that's great. Because if you come on the board, your heartstrings are going to be attached. You're going to bring along your company as much as you can, introduce it to the customers and those types of things, the needs. And the goal is, the food industry as that can play a role, and they do, right? Of course they do, but it's like, how do you play a bigger role? And even seeing others do it causes people to ask the question to themselves, well, how do they do it? How do I do it? Right. And it spurred a lot of those conversations. And I mean, you've had a conversation with Megan as well, right? And
that's right.
How fantastic she is. And it's amazing. Like, Mississauga is lucky to have her working in the community, and her passion, applying her trade there. but it's also she grew up in the food bank to some degree, and you don't get exposure to all the different ways of working that a large multinational does, and then we can share those practices of just how to operate an organization, and she's super open to that. And I think trying to help change that to be more efficient and different ways of thinking and making decisions. So it's been, I'd say super fulfilling personally. And it's fun because I sit through town halls, and our organization will present something on Foodbanks Mississauga. And I honestly, most of the employee base don't know I'm actually associated with it, because it's not something that go around. They're associated with it, right?
Yeah.
I kind of keep it quiet from the regards that I am as well. But they just really appreciate being part of it. And like you said, people just feel good doing good. And as a company has a heartbeat, and we have a heartbeat, it just makes us a more effective company, right? It affects the bottom line. It's not why you do it, but it's a happy output, right? Just the fact that you've got engaged employees, and they're connected to a company that's doing things that matter to them and matter to their community.
It speaks to your values, and when you actually care about your community, it speaks to, you care about your employees. Right. So, and that's the key here, is that there's just so much win. And Todd, you talked about the experience that, and we do appreciate that, the experience that you bring into the work that we do. Would you say that, because I know that when I speak to people who are involved either at the committee level or the board level, they also will come back and say, from a own professional growth level, they've grown. They've learned other things, working and volunteering with a charity. So it's really like beneficial on both ends, right? It's beneficial for us because we're getting your expertise, but there's also professional growth and professional development and personal growth as well. So like I said, it's such a win-win. And I get the opportunity to talk to employees who come and volunteer at the community market, for example, the pop-up markets or the food bank to home, and do the deliveries. All these programs are heavily reliant on volunteers. And sometimes I'll have a conversation, and what do you love about this? And they of course love the ability for them to give their own time. But then the companies like Kimberly Clark also support them by giving them the time off to do good in the community. So we benefit from that as well. So it's such a positive relationship. And when I talk to people, they talk about, the ability to actually give back through their company is very significant.
I think it's a big deal. Like, I think when I was there, I was there a couple of years, and then even then, every now and then we'd take a couple of cases of Kleenex, right, and drop it off at schools, right, and my nephew's school at the time was one of those, public school, right? Not very well funded. And so I drop it off, and just, it's like a small thing, right? And then people just get so excited, right? They just get so excited in the school. Like the last time I went there, I think all in all, I gave them maybe 3 or 4 cases over 6 months or whatever the time period we were doing it. And, like the principal knew me by first name. My nephew's like, what are you doing? Why do they love you so much? And you're going, I dropped off some Kleenex, right? But like small things like that, it's amazing. So what you guys are doing now, I think it's just, it's a game changer, right? Like it's such a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's such an amazing thing. So cool that you guys can actually put this together.
I think it's awesome. I think the fact even more than a check signing, the fact you're willing to give time, Todd, on the board, I think is really critical, because a lot of times what will happen, especially as you get larger to multinationals, et cetera, is the boards you go on aren't typically necessarily these types of boards, right? They're more for-profit boards. Nothing wrong with that. But it's very nice to see the nonprofit side, being supported as well, especially with the expertise from for-profit types of business, because, like kind of, you guys, we're talking 3PL. We might've had too many warehouses. We got pallets here, pallets there. You're paying for storage. You're thinking we're trying to give this stuff to people who really need it. And we're incurring costs in other spots. I mean, from a business standpoint, you're thinking, listen, you shouldn't be talking 3PL
with
anyway.
no fixed revenue, right? Like with no fixed revenue, like we have donations today.
It's insane, right? You think
we've got to sign a
run this way.
warehouse lease for what, 5 years, 7 years, right? But we can only speak to revenue we have, donations, donations that we have for the next months, maybe a year. Like, so to have some guarantees that, hey, you know what, I can actually pay for the warehouse space and then maybe keep some lights on, and then I can actually find things because I have a warehouse management system. Like, it's kind of a big deal, right?
Like, seriously, right? It's a big deal.
Yeah.
We also want to be respectful. We fundraise. These are hard-earned dollars that corporations as well as individuals are giving to us. And we want to be as efficient in spending that money. And we don't want to be spending it on things like trying to be, doing things manually when we can have a system that will make it so much more efficient.
Exactly.
So we can actually use those resources for what it's needed for, which is to buy food.
Exactly.
Right. So it's very, very important. And again, I come back to, we are limited in our resources. We are very limited. And yeah, there's no guarantee in our funding from year to year. It's, what we fundraise is what we can spend.
Right.
And so, and from our perspective, we're seeing increased numbers month by month by month. And every month, we get a kind of a report as a team, of what the previous month's reports are. And each month in the last few months, we're seeing the highest month ever. And I'm saying, okay, when is this highest month ever going to stop? It needs to stop.
It's still going up.
Oh, it's absolutely. The numbers are, and it's really, really scary and unfortunate that I'm going to say that there isn't any clear signs of these numbers going down anytime soon. Since 2019, just the numbers are astounding. I know 2019 wasn't too far, just pre-COVID. Since then to now, food bank use has gone up by 82%. Show me a business that's had that kind of increase. It's incredible. From
how many people are using the services? Just so we get a number on, like, how many? Mississauga is what, about 1 million people? Million and some?
700, 800,000, somewhere.
Yeah.
So of 800,000 people, like, how many people are I think people see perspective. I don't think people appreciate the size of the numbers sometimes. How many people monthly are in need?
So last year we served over 56,000 neighbors in Mississauga, and that's 8%. 8% of Mississauga's population. It's significant. And as I said,
we're like one of the wealthiest cities in the country.
If you walk down, you're in a coffee bar in Mississauga. One out of every 12 people is in need of assistance from the food banks.
That's bonkers.
It is. From June 2023 to May 24, so the month that we just completed, we saw an average of 39% food bank users month over month compared to the previous year. These numbers, and over 15,000 of those, the 56,000 I mentioned, are children. These numbers are heart-wrenching. They're just, 8%, like I said, and 42% of those are children, and we're seeing those numbers increasing every month. Sorry, I should take that back. Literally every month.
It's terrible, right? I mean, the only guarantee we seem to have in this business is that you're guaranteed to have people at the door next morning, which is the worst guarantee you want to have.
We went from we need to feed some people to we need a warehouse management. Like, I think to me, that's one of those silly things that
it's crazy.
If you're a CPG person, a warehouse management, guys, this is like, this is like cross talking at Walmart. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, now we're talking about pallets. We're talking about it's unreal.
It's interesting as they've gone through the evolution. I mean, there's such a great team over there, passionate, purpose driven, right? And then when they just added a COO, right, to the organization, Juanita Moore, who has a background from retail and Loblaw and manufacturers, and is bringing that expertise in-house because of, you imagine with that growing need, it just becomes impossible to do the way they used to be done. And how do you support the organization to grow the operation? I think the big one is also to grow the revenue stream to support the operation. And that's it's difficult, right? And you have individual donors. I think when I had joined, a lot of the mindset was how do we increase individual donors? That's where people in Mississauga have been helping support. The question now becomes though is how do companies step forward, because they have to be able to support what's going on in the growth. They've seen more of it, right? So I think it's on the right path with companies like ourselves. And there's other ones out there. I know a few. I mean, I know ConAgra stepped forward. There's different companies, General Mills, who give product. I'm not going to name all of them, right? Yeah. But the thing is most of us as CPG are located in Mississauga. It's kind of like the heart and center, the retailers, many of the head offices are. And then how do we here? Yeah, and probably remember, Phil, you change products, you change a UPC, right? You take one item out of a box and all of a sudden you got to flip over your whole line. Well, we start looking and saying, well, how can we redirect that product now with what didn't sell through? And we put it in our world, we don't have best before dates, right? It's diapers and whatnot.
Right.
So it's not a challenge from that regard. It's perfectly good product. We're a company of innovation, so it's really, well received. We send it to the food banks, right? Rather than trying to find a clear out to make $1 on it. That's often what we're doing. And I know a lot of the food companies are stepping forward to figure out how do they get an ongoing flow. That being said, there's so much more that can be done, right? And hopeful that as we go through the next phases, the operation gets shored up and all of that, but that the industry plays a bigger role. And I think that's one of the.
I think it's your mindset though, Todd. I think the way you're doing it, like when you do it this way, it's sort of what you said, Sukaina. If you go to individuals in the community, individuals in this country or most countries, we're tapped out. Mm-hmm. Like they're just tapped out, right? Yeah. There's only so much you can do. But these individuals all work in the community at these larger companies or companies of any size. Their way of giving could be as listed. Stop tapping on my shoulder, tap on theirs. I work for them anyway. And maybe what I can do is participate with some time.
Yes.
As opposed to cash. Let the company I work for, that I put the money back in my community and support it, and they're here and they're supporting it. Let them sort of do it, but I'll also do my part. Then it's not coming out of my pocket per se, it's coming out of my time bucket, which is obviously valuable, but giving your time to causes of higher moral, higher societal value are good, but it's it's always a spin.
I always say that there's 3 ways to give back. It's not just one avenue. There's time, talent, and treasure, right? So Todd is giving his time as an individual with his expertise, and then and with his talent as well, and then the treasure is the actual donations. And as a company, this can be a holistic. It doesn't have to be the company's going to do all of it, or an individual is expected to do all of it. It's components, and we have partnerships with companies who will say, okay, you know what, our employees are really important to us. Our need to make an investment into the community that we actually work and live in is important to us. How can we bring everybody together? And we have companies who will actually do, for example, a corporate donation, a food donation, and then for our employees, we're going to do a match. So for X number of donation, whatever, we'll do a $1 for $1 match or whatever it is to a limit. So everybody is engaged in giving back. So it's not just about, this is a company initiative and I'm not really interested in it. It's such a team environment. And then you come into a volunteer, like at the community market. It's such an incredible experience. And I really can't say enough about this, that there are so many ways that companies can actually give back in their local communities. What we're looking for is companies who actually want to make it send a powerful message to their employees. That this is our values, this is important to us, and you're important to us, and we're going to invest in our community together, right? Yeah. And then the best part of this is that, and Todd, I think you can probably speak to this a little further more, is that we want to talk to companies, and then we want to figure out together what's important for both of us. So it's not about me handing a piece of paper over to the company and saying, here's all our needs and this is what we need you to do. It's about, hey, company X, what's important to you? and then let's talk about it, and how can we deliver, and how can we work together to make that investment, but it has to be, giving back, and how we can support individuals facing food insecurity in the city.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I second that. I mean, as being a multinational, Kimberly Clark, extremely old company, like 152 years. It was shocking, company lasts that long and still thriving, but doing well. And I mean, one of the reasons I choose to work there, and I think a lot of the employees do, is because you hear a lot about being, purpose-led. I feel like Kimberly Clark, even right from the top, very much is. And the motto is, or not the motto, but the purpose is, like better care for a better world. But really how you bring that to life as an organization, and this is, to our conversations, we want to make a difference in people's lives. Like our products are in the hands of 1 of 4 people around the world, right? So it's massive. We're profiting from it. We're in the sense of a business perspective, but we also have a privilege. It's a privilege to us, and it's our responsibility to deliver back. And I think what's nice is they allow us to have that conversation and write it locally, right? So how do we touch lives in Canada? How does our company? And that's not prescribed from the top. It's more of, where do you see those needs? And that's how this conversation led to this through the recent times. And there's a couple other areas that we've built pillars where it's like, we think this is important to our people. We think this is important to just us as humans. I think you call it that, right? And lucky enough, I get to be sitting in this seat and to be able to have that conversation with my organization and lead it towards this. I feel like that's a privilege, and I'm thankful to be able to have that conversation with Foodbanks Mississauga and end up here, right? Because you just try to make a difference. I think that's what most of us feel good about. Like we feel we're jumping off the Kleenex boxes. It's what you did today. That will give you more happiness than a lot of other things that go on, right? And I hope that more companies, they've always had the purpose and the mission, that they actually live them, and they live them authentically and locally. I think is a bigger way to do it, right? Because there's so many different needs around the world in every country that we operate in.
For sure.
I think one of the things that I would love to just mention is that with Foodbanks Mississauga, you're actually touching the entire city, right? You're having, because of our 65 plus agencies that we support across the city. Mississauga is the sixth largest city, I think, in Canada. So to have an opportunity to partner with an organization that actually touches the entire city through so many agencies, through our network, is very impactful, and it gives you a sense of personal as well as like corporate satisfaction that you're actually making. It's huge in people's lives, right? Food is such an important thing. It doesn't just affect. It affects everything. It affects your mental health. It affects your education. It affects these children's learning. So to know that when you make an investment into something like this, you're actually touching so many aspects of a person's life.
Yeah.
You guys are doing a wonderful thing.
Yeah, you guys are doing good stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
It's awesome. It's unfortunate, but awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely unfortunate, but thank you both for coming on.
Like seriously, that was very kind of you to give us your time.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I just want to comment to Kenny that we couldn't do the work that we do without community, without corporate partners like Kimberly 100%. And yourselves, who actually help us to amplify our message and work with us. So it's, again, a partnership. I love, I talk about that a lot, because there's just so many people, so many partners involved in working together to help individuals facing food insecurity. So thank you all for your
our pleasure.
Yeah,
our pleasure.
Honestly, this is for us. This is what we do. We love it. So we're so glad that we can help. Thank you both for taking the time out. We totally appreciate it. And then we're excited. We'll get this episode out fairly quickly, so people kind of understand what's happening.
Nice to meet you, Kenny. Nice to see you again.
Todd, it was nice to see you again. Yeah. Awesome. And tell my friend there, I won't call him out on air, but
I know my friend
he better be in one of those local markets somewhere. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Take care, guys. Have a nice afternoon.
Great rest of your
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.